Space friends, my space friends, we have got a good special episode for you today. Usually we're sticking to Star Citizen. We do space games in general, but today we have a very special occurrence. Finally, we've gotten a extra long hour preview of Starfield with a lot of stuff in it. Holy crap, there's a lot of stuff. So, of course, the man himself, Lord Stradamus, Astropub, Astro Historian, however you know him, you love him. He's coming on today to talk to me about the show we just watched, what's in Starfield, what you can expect from it. How does it compare to Star Citizen? Does it even need to be compared to Star Citizen? And it's going to be a good talk, man. How you feeling about this game so far?
I'm feeling optimistic, but I'm optimistic about a lot of games. So I've been optimistic about this game since it was announced. I'm hoping that Bethesda really leans into what their strengths are and really comes out with a game that can bring a lot of folks who I've seen actively hate science fiction to bring them into the idea of Bethesda doing a sci-fi game, bring them into the fold, into the welcoming arms of the rest of us.
I feel like you can't be such a big fan of Star Citizen and not be an optimist.
Yeah. That's true. That is very true.
So I'm with you though. I will see a game and I'll see all the good things about it. You know, like you're excited. The mechanics, the features, the things that you see, they get you thinking about what the game could be, which obviously is the hype. That's what the marketing team wants, but it's fun, you know? It's just a matter of kind of also remembering that the game could very much disappoint based on the marketing that you're seeing and what you're expecting. Cyberpunk.
Yeah. Yep.
Sorry, no, that was just windows open, dust in the air and stuff.
Let's just put that out there right now. Bethesda does not have a good record of launching games without massive bug issues. Sometimes game-breaking bugs. That's a run ending that prevents you from playing the game.
Yeah,
that is not likely. That is likely going to continue with the Starfield. So if that's something that's like you can't deal with, that's an immediate problem that you have to deal with. Right.
That's I think the first thing to talk about here. Don't pre-order.
No.
But honestly, Bethesda might have problems with this, but every game company from the small indie studios to the largest of publishers seem to be rushed a lot. Now, indie, I mean like a small studio that still has a publisher, but a lot of times it seems like these games are getting rushed and they're releasing not necessarily to our expectations. I imagine Starfield will have some level of that. So let's talk about the launch of this game and the game itself as if it launched with like a reasonable, you know, like it's game's not broken.
It's functional.
Yeah.
It works. Yeah. It just works, as Todd likes to say.
Because one of the big concerns between us two, between the people who are watching in the show, between even I saw some on the YouTube chat, was that they were not really focusing on showing us a lot of gameplay at once. They were doing a lot of cuts. No. They were doing a lot of transitions and stuff. And it had people thinking, what do you think of that style? Was that what they normally do, actually?
No, kind of. They did that with Fallout 4 as well, but they also showed off a lot of like cutscenes or like full sittings, that kind of thing. It's the problem. The problem is that with a game like Starfield, it's an open sandbox kind of RPG. There's going to be a lot of elements that work together to make the game function. And if you have the wrong collection of elements, it can screw up the feel and the flow. And so that is still a concern. Like the 20-second cuts. It's partially to save time. But that's also another problem. One of the things that we hear about in space games, not just Star Citizen, but Elite, No Man's Sky, and X games, a lot of other games, is how much time is wasted through traveling. And that may also be a sign of that, a sign that Starfield is itself going to be a lot of walking, because we know there's probably not going to be atmospheric flight. There's almost certainly not. They've said that they don't want to have atmospheric spaceships. So
well, I mean, how many scenes did they show in that showcase of like slow motion people walking on a planet?
Yeah.
I have a feeling that's going to be I'm going to have a really good stamina skill perk.
Yes. Yes. You'll be walking a lot.
Yeah,
But keep that in mind. Like, and that's not a bad thing necessarily. There's a lot of people who enjoy those sorts of games and want that experience.
Death
But
Stranding.
if you're the kind of person who played, Skyrim or Fallout 4 by like running to a place, complaining about running to a place, and then getting getting like a quick travel, and then just constantly traveling back and forth. There's still going to be some of that in here. Obviously, they showed that off with to be able to like scan a planet, find a location, just be able to travel to it. But there's going to still be some of that traditional Bethesda. You walk around, you explore an area, you get to a location, you mark it on your map, and then you can come back later.
Okay,
So
that is that's a great point. I didn't even think about that. I want to talk. I think that's a great way for us to segue into talking about planets. I do want to get to the big question, kind of what is Starfield? Who is this game for? We're going to touch on that in like just a few minutes. But first, that is a very good point. Fast travel in games is kind of a given for a lot of these types of RPGs. And because they're land maps, you can just fast travel anywhere. But now, I doubt they're going to do fast traveling between different planets, right? And they talked about how you'll have limited fuel, you won't be able to get to certain places.
Yeah, and they've said that they modeled this more off of the old hardcore RPGs, and the old hardcore RPGs had you moving. You got to walk from place to place. Now, do I think we're going to see like 30-minute, 20 to 30-minute or an hour-long travel between planets? No, this is they made that very clear. This is about fun. So there will be some travel, but I can't imagine it being or some sort of like using the gravity drive that they call like to be able to jump between planets.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine it being instantaneous. I imagine it's going to take some time to travel. So.
Yeah. Okay. So I lied. We're not going to talk about that for that long. Obviously, this is no. I think actually it makes a lot more sense to get into this from here. This is not a simulator. This isn't a space sim. This isn't a competitor to Star Citizen or Elite Dangerous or X4 or
kind of not really. That's more of a
X4. You can't go on planets in X4. Like, yeah. I don't think there's any good competitors to this right now.
You said one earlier when we were watching it together. The one that you were afraid of. No.
Mass Effect.
Yeah, Mass Effect.
That's true. Yes, they do have another one in the works.
Yeah. So I think this is probably the closest competitor would be Mass Effect. And it uses the same sort of, you're exploring the universe in your own ship, but this has got a lot more detail than Mass Effect in the sense that you can get out of your ship and walk around, get back in your ship, talk to your crew, take off, fight in combat in space. And whereas Mass Effect was much more linear, it was open world, but it had very like you went down specific routes and did specific things.
Yeah,
there wasn't a lot of like the exploration was using probes to scan planets or landing with your Mako on the planet for some small stuff. This is a lot more advanced than that, but it makes sense. It's a next generation. So
the first Mass Effect was very much not combat focused. Everybody noticed the second and third game really bumped that up, but this does kind of feel like the 2020s version of the first Mass Effect. I really hope it is, but it's like I think we've had this podcast probably a year ago at this exact point or so. And I remember talking at that time about how it's crazy how Microsoft grabbed up Mass Effect for their first game and it defined the space genre for that time, and now they could be doing the same thing with Starfield, and you could see a parallel. I really hope it works out for them, because this is the game I think I wanted when I saw that first trailer for Mass Effect Andromeda, when the guy is sitting there in front of the screen, flipping between planets. It's like, which planet do I want to go to? It's playing that kind of Western music, so you get the frontier vibe. And every single one of those things is in Starfield. And I'm like, man, why didn't they do this with Andromeda? Because they didn't have the tech, but
And kind of leading into the segue into that, it's like the planets. Like, Todd did you see that moon? You can go there. That's not a skybox, and those sorts of things. And the one question that still remains, it lingers: how big are these planets? Like, are these planets like slightly bigger than Skyrim? And it's just sort of like they do some voodoo magic in terms of like the perspective to make it feel like it's bigger, or are we talking like Star Citizen level planets, which is like the size of continents almost in terms of their landmass.
They
It's
didn't
obviously going to
really.
be scaled in some case, but they didn't say anything about it.
Yeah. Okay, before we get too deep into that, tell us, what is this game supposed to be? Who is it for? Who wants to play this? It's not multiplayer, but it's got a lot of space stuff. Like, who do you think their market is?
It's Bethesda fans. I mean, it's more than just Bethesda fans. Bethesda is a huge, like, they have their own ecosystem unto themselves in terms of players. You know, people still make videos exploring Skyrim, and that game came out in 2011. So there's definitely that. And I think the new audience that Bethesda wants to attract are the hardcore RPG players who enjoyed games like Fallout New Vegas, or you know, maybe even like the Mass Effect fans, and to a degree, people like who liked Freelancer and Starlancer and Privateer, those sorts of games that, you know, from Chris Roberts back in the day. It was those older folks, those people who are now drawn to Star Citizen, to draw to that. Maybe even No Man's Sky people. But it's for people who like RPGs. Like, if you don't like RPGs, if you're just sitting there being like, I don't want to mess with RPGs, this probably not for you. It's not Call of Duty. Like, it's not it's more complex than Mass Effect in many ways. Even like later Mass Effects, from what it looks at in the stats system. So
yeah, this is a full on, like, this is the game to play if you wanted to be I say a part in space, and I guess that's why we play a lot of these different games. But as somebody who was never really into space sims, I didn't play Freelancer. I didn't play a lot of space flying games, like the old X-Wing games, and games that are referenced a lot when talking about Star Citizen, Star Wars Galaxies, all these things. Never touched them. At that time, my space game was Knights of the Old Republic, and from there I moved on to things like Jade Empire, and which is wildly different, but like Mass Effect, Deus Ex a little bit. Like, those types of story and character driven RPGs is what they're going for here. It doesn't feel like they're going for something that is about the spaceship itself, but they do seem to focus a bit on spaceships. Modular spaceships are impressive. I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't need my Retaliator anymore, right?
Yeah, it's there. It's a Lego collection. You can build anything you want to. That's very Bethesda. I love that idea. I think it's I don't want to, because it's been a while since I've played No Man's Sky, so I don't want to jump the gun. But I feel like this is more immersive, or more like a lot better than even like the No Man's Sky system. Probably close to X4, though I don't remember if X4 you could build ships or not. I remember you could buy them, but it stands alone in what it's doing with those ships. And the fact that those ships' design and layout will affect the entirety of the secondary gameplay space, which is space.
And the fact that you get an interior with all of that, like, you can customize the interior of a ship and have NPCs walking around there. It sounds really good. And again, I think I'm going to keep going back to this. We saw all of these in clips, so it sounds amazing, but we don't know how it's going to work into the game just yet.
Yeah, we don't know if that's just dressing, right? We don't know if just having NPCs walking around, if they do anything for you, if they improve the things, or if they have unique dialogue, or we know that they said that you could build like stations in there that are specifically for you to like customize your weaponry, or to do research or whatever. You can have some stations and stuff like that. It seems like almost like a mobile outpost, or mobile base, as it were, a mobile home base. You know?
In terms of where, I guess, Bethesda themselves, the games they make, how do you feel this compares to their past games?
It's a move away from Fallout 4 and all of the worst parts of Fallout 4, which I'm glad for. I feel like they mentioned Morrowind and Oblivion a lot. It feels a lot more like Morrowind, where you're just kind of dropped in there and you just kind of find the story. Obviously, there'll be a little bit more handholding because it's a modern video game, and it's a modern video game geared towards a casual audience. So we're going to see some levels of like, go here, pick this quest up. but it seems to be less insulting in terms of like, it's not like, one thing I noticed was like the screen wasn't filled with markers,
with like icons and stuff. Yeah.
icons and stuff like that. And the mark, your like little compass wasn't filled with icons and all these sorts of things. It was just nice and clean, and it was emphasis on the whole like
The environment.
versus, yeah, which is nice. It didn't draw your eyes away from other things.
So you're getting more of those kind of legitimate open world vibes of Morrowind and their earlier games. Do you you're not getting any Fallout 76 DNA then?
Oh, the combat is straight Fallout 76. Yeah. Like even the little HUD pop up with like the numbers and that's straight up ripped from Fallout 76. That's how they do it compared to.
So they've been using this game engine for a while, and we kind of saw them start with Fallout 4. I don't remember if anything before Fallout 4 did any sort of crafting, or they did crafting, but not like base building. But we saw them do that sort of first iteration of craft or base building in Fallout 4, and then improve it with 76. And it sounds like they kind of did the same too with the FPS. Fallout 4 was a good step up for FPS with them. 76, it sounds like they did stuff with it. So they have been, I don't want to say that this was their whole reason for all of that, but they've definitely been improving their systems towards this game. Does it feel like this was a target that they've had? Do you think this is actually as special a game as they're saying, or they're just saying that to make people feel good?
I think we did an earlier one of these where I talked about the history of Starfield and how far back Starfield goes into Bethesda's history. Todd Howard has been talking about making this game since like 2001. He's been on the record about this game being a game he wanted to make.
Really?
Yeah. Or since 1998. I think 98 was whenever Todd first started working for Bethesda, that's when he talked about this game. And a lot of other people have been getting involved into it. There's many attempts at them starting this and then just canceling it, or that they had at one point they had the Star Trek license to make a game for Star Trek, and they decided they wanted to do their own. So they've flirted with the idea of doing a science fiction game for decades now, and not like Fallout 4, but like in the like their own kind of IP. And as a result, yes, it almost feels like everything that Bethesda has done up to this point has been them trying ideas out that they wanted for Starfield. And so this feels like the especially with all the stuff, it feels like the ultimate end point, the natural end point of all of their development they've been doing, especially for the last decade or so.
I had no idea he was on the record about it. I mean, they keep touting the whole 25 years in the making line, and of course people are taking it literally as like they've been sitting at the computer coding for 25 years. But there is something to be said about knowing you have the idea, knowing you have the people, the money, and the capabilities of putting that idea into action, but still waiting for the perfect moment. And in all honesty, this feels like the perfect moment. I mean, from the way that the space race has been heating up again, to the excitement of things like the James Webb Space Telescope, to the ability of the gaming technology to actually allow you to make a space environment now, like all of it just feels like it needed to culminate over these last maybe 8 to 10 years. And they've nailed the timing, because Mass Effect's nowhere to be seen. Outer Wilds had their game, but they're in between. There's just nothing to beat this right now. And if they can just pull it out and launch the game successfully, I see this being a special game for them, leading into a special series. And honestly, what if this is the pinnacle tentpole game for Microsoft Game Studios as a whole? It takes it away from Halo, takes it away from any of the other franchises.
I am okay with that.
Same. I love Halo, okay with that. I'm down with that.
Halo needs to evolve or die, and it hasn't done so.
Don't say die.
It will eventually evolve into something better than it currently is. But it needs to, like, we need. I'm going to say something controversial, but I think Master Chief needs to get put back on the shelf. We need to explore the universe in Halo more than we need to see about Master Chief.
I'm in agreement. If you've read the books, then you know that they can do it. There's so much lore.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They can go a lot further, but they're just so afraid of having to not to pull that safety net away, because they try to do that.
They're so scared
Reach, and that didn't do as well. Even though I think people remember Reach
Oh, it
and
was so good.
ODST more fondly than they
ODST.
do
Oh man, yeah.
like
They could do it,
Halo
man.
4.
All we need
Yeah.
is a first contact game, like a suspenseful FPS shooter
Harvest.
first comp. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah. I'm sorry. We're getting distracted.
Survival horror for FPS. Halo Harvest, baby. That's that. Love it. Love it.
We need
horror
to just
everywhere.
we need to just do a show where we just talk about all of the different sci-fi. I mean, you have way more in your back pocket than I do. Like you could talk about so many different franchises, but yeah, our like favorite sci-fi lore, because there's just such good stuff out there.
Yeah, there's so many good stuff, and I'd do more of them if I had more time. I just don't have enough time.
Yeah.
We're going to talk a little bit about Starfield's lore as well, to kind of anchor some of this idea as well. Bring that into this.
Yeah. So let's set the scene. When is Starfield taking place? That's probably the biggest thing.
I want to say. Let me pull up my notes on it. I think it wants to takes place about. I want to say 500 years, but I think that's just the systems. The systems is 500 systems.
I thought it was, it was like 2030.
2020 or 2030s.
The year 2300 something.
Yeah.
Like 200 years, 300 years in the future, I thought.
It takes place in 2330.
Okay, yeah. It's about 300 years in the future.
Yes. The systems, there are two major powers in the universe. We don't know what happened to Earth. They haven't mentioned Earth, but they did mention Mars in this recent one. So there's like a mining facility on Mars where they get most of their materials. At some point, Constellation was founded in 2188, and which is the organization you're part of. And the city of New Atlantis was founded a little bit before then. On Alpha Centauri. So Constellation as a group is kind of like a group of explorers that have been around for a very long time. They've been around for hundreds of years by the time of the gameplay.
And they said they're kind of like a mythical group almost, right? At the point that you're playing.
Yeah. You can think of them as like an international NASA that over time has kind of dwindled and they've become more popular. They're more like a family. Like they're a super tight-knit group of people who don't like to talk to outsiders, whose sole job is scientific exploration. They only care about scientific exploration.
Love that.
And they don't care about the politics or anything else like that. They're trying to unravel the mysteries of the universe. So, and even in the kind of the stylings inside, you can kind of see they're very based off of those gentlemen's club explorer clubs that existed in the 19th century. But you're not alone. They're not the only ones. The United Colonies is this large group. It's the biggest force in the galaxy. It has control of probably Earth because it has control of the Sol system, and Andromeda or Alpha Centauri, which is where the Alpha Centauri is its headquarters, is its capital, as well as they have the Vanguard, which is kind of like the UC military. It's sort of like the frontier specialists, and by signing up, apparently you can get citizenship. So that we know that there's a citizenship system, service guaranteed citizenship. And then there is another force out there called the Free Star Collective. Now, when did the Colony Wars happen?
There was like a schism, and they broke off and were their own ragtag group.
We don't know. It's only been like maybe I think a decade since and I'll probably someone will correct me in the comments because I'm not seeing my notes in the exact timeline, but about only a decade ago, there was the end of the Colony Wars, which was a fight between the UC and the Free Star Collective. We don't know what it was. We don't know if the Free Star Collective was a part of the UC that broke off, or they were their own group that tried to resist UC expansion. But they're a separate group. They're not at war with the UC, but they have a tentative peace. Nobody wants to start the war again, but at the same time, they don't like each other. the two political entities don't like each other.
Right.
But on top of that, you've got cultists, you've got corporations, you've got Neon, the city of Vice, where they started off as a fishing, and then they did a fishing platform, and they discovered that there was a drug they could harvest that they would use to really make money. So because it's outside of the UC's control, it's this like anything goes location.
Right.
So the universe itself is set with many different groups. There's even a pirate group call themselves the
Crimson Fleet.
The Crimson Fleet. And the Crimson Fleet is unique because it's not just, it's like a pirate nation. It's a group of pirates who decided to work together to cause more chaos. So they're less of a,
I know those types.
They're kind of like they're more of a third power in the verse of Starfield than they're like a splinter actions.
He called it the verse. So these are all...
It's still a verse.
Yeah, technically. So I think I counted 5 main factions that you named there. And there's pretty good vibes, like different kinds of vibes between them. We got the Freestar Collective. Their concept art came out and people were like, oh, that feels like Tatooine. That feels like Firefly. Yeah. You get that very ragtag Western frontier kind of.
Yeah. Their military is called the Rangers. So,
right.
And, you know, all of the footage has them with cowboy hats on. So, yeah, they're very Wild West.
Got to put a cowboy hat on top of your space helmet. Just tape it on the top. So we got them. We got the United Colonies. You call them
United Colonies, yeah.
And they are their cities are huge. That that is like your classic metropolis center. Probably where a lot of people spend a lot of their time. They said it's like the biggest city they've made is that capital city.
It's like the Federation of Planets in Star Trek. That kind of vibe. So,
and then we've got Constellation, the group that you're part of, and you said Vanguard was the military. I think you said.
Vanguard's part of the UC.
Okay.
It's like their military. So like you have the Rangers for the Freestar Collective. Vanguard is the UC's military kind of like cohort.
And then you named, what was it called? Neon is one of the cities. And we know there are a few different cities in these planets. And I'm assuming these must have their own sort of local governments. Do you think that those will provide us, for lack of a better term, mission givers? Or do you think they'll also have factions that maybe you can interact with?
They'll almost certainly have factions, smaller factions, but like it's just kind of a Bethesda staple. Like, yeah, they're like Fallout 4 had the Brotherhood of Steel, the Minutemen, the Institute, and the Railroad, but you still had, you know, the individual pirate gangs. You had the Gunners. You had the like any number of different smaller groups which you could have relations with, or were just generic bad guys or neutral to you, depending on how you went. I think we'll definitely see a lot of that expansion as well. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw dozens of small corporations or large corporations that you can direct as well.
Would love that.
Another kind of aspect of it.
One of my favorite things about Star Citizen is that all of the companies who are making those things, those guns and armor and stuff that you use in the game, you can also like run missions for, or like, you know, work with them and stuff like that. I really do hope we get to see something like that in Starfield. So we talked about the factions. Let's talk a little bit about, because we talked about time too. Let's talk about how the design of the game works. A lot of the viewers here are used to Star Citizen, which has many different design ship companies, and they all kind of do their own thing. And it's also like a 900-year period, so there's that sort of spreading out of design styles. They describe this as NASA punk. It's very tactile, it's very feely, it just has an interesting vibe to it. How do you think this fits for a sci-fi game?
Well, I think it fits in terms of, I don't think anyone's tried something like this. You know, like I don't think we've ever seen a sci-fi game that attempts to try to blend realism with, like, realism not in the sense of actual realism, but more like aesthetic realism with a sci-fi element. We've seen it a lot in movies and television shows, mostly because of necessity, right? Like, you're going to take you need a spacesuit. You're not going to go buy an actual spacesuit.
Yeah.
And making a spacesuit is complicated and takes time. So you're going to take what you have available to you and modify it to make it look good.
You're going to go out to Comic-Con and steal some person's outfit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, there's like, we've had high altitude suits for a long time in history, which were, you know, and there are lots of them are being sold online in surplus and usually pretty decent, especially like Soviet ones, old Soviet ones.
Right.
And those were the ones that the early astronauts used anyway. So if you can take that and add a little bits and bobbles here, little greebles on it, it'll look good.
It's like what they did with
you
the guns in the recent Star Wars movies. It's just like regular guns with a little bit extra on it.
Exactly. And with games, it's always been, well, we don't have that limitation, so let's go crazy. Like Mass Effect was all like slimmed down bodysuits and nice like contoured plastic, like plasteel sort of, like metal armor. And like sci-fi usually tends to get that more, it tends to look more military, or even like the suits tend to be more
smooth,
focused on they tend to be focused on like taking modern stuff and then like modern military or modern clothing and stuff like that, and just kind of extrapolate that out into the kind of smooth edges. What Bethesda's doing is it's dirty. They're making space dirty. It's, what the ISS looks like is not clean. It is dirty. It is filled with experiments and things floating around and stuff stuck to the walls, which is where it is. And combining that sort of like straight, simplistic, easy to work aesthetic. I just saw that again, so I want to make sure everything's good. Okay. That stuff with the with more of a grungy cyberpunk sort of like style to it, trying to give that a style. And I think it works. Just like Fallout 3 or Fallout series is the 50s, but in post-apocalypse, as Skyrim and Elder Scrolls is fantasy, but with kind of their own flavor on it, their own take on it. This is science fiction, or like a space game, but with astronauts, like modern NASA astronauts, or the modern space exploration bent to it.
So you mentioned that this is a little dirty. It's a different kind of style than what we're used to. Let's talk about then the actual display of this stuff, the graphics themselves. What do you think of the looks of this game?
It looks great. It looks fantastic. The animation, the dead-eyed Bethesda stare is still there, but at this point, I don't know if I'd want to change it, because then it wouldn't look like a Bethesda game. There's the lockdown. You can't move the face much because it can't move out of this screen for the zoom in. So you can't emote in much, and the eyes have to follow you. That kind of, they're doing a little bit more. You're a little bit more animated, but it's still there. But everything else is much smoother. The lighting is great. The movements look good.
Does it scream?
This will look great.
Does it scream Xbox Series X, PS5 generation?
Yes. Yeah. I would say it screams, look at me, I'm going to try to do 720 and 60 FPS kind of thing.
Oh no.
But I do think it also really leans into the fact that Bethesda is a PC games maker. Like it looks like a game you would see on where a high-end PC would be able to run it like really well, and like make it really pop. So, kind of proving that the engine, I would say, it proves that the engine isn't as bad as people seem to be thinking about it. Because I remember, only a couple of years ago, people were just trashing the engine, being like, "You got to start from the very beginning because this is terrible." And this proves that it's still got legs to it.
They said getting into this that they were doing a pretty big overhaul on the engine, right? So like this is they're coming back with something that they feel is refreshed. How does it feel like they have made good progress since, say, Fallout 76 or Fallout 4, whatever you think their previous best is?
Yeah, oh yeah, it's a lot better overall. The animation system looks better, the lighting looks better, the train generation looks better, the creatures and the fauna look better, everything looks better.
Lighting, they mentioned real-time global illumination too. So that's going to be, oh my gosh, with like the way that I know they're going to play with the atmospherics, with the sunsets and everything. Screenshot simulator.
Yeah. Maybe, I mean, people were saying in my chat already, it was screenshot field, because they even have a camera mode in it, like a dedicated camera mode you'll be able to like take screenshots with. I know all of the screenshot creators that I follow who do Star Citizen. I'm going to be inundated for 2 months of just screenshots.
Like when Cyberpunk came out, that was just Cyberpunk screenshots everywhere. I think I'm gonna put my bet down on photo field, #photo field for the virtual photographers on Twitter. I like that one.
Yes, photo field. There we go.
So graphics wise, things are looking good. I would say not up to the standard I want from a space game, but I am not playing Bethesda games for graphics. So I don't mind. I think this looks good for a Bethesda game, and I feel like you need to take every game company and give it context, you know? Or is it rather put it in a vacuum? I guess put it in a vacuum. Compare it to itself, to the game company itself. And I do feel like this is a good target for them to hit as long as it's consistent, especially with all the land and things that they're trying to stuff into this game, because it is a big game. But it's also a very detailed game, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Very detailed. I will say, and I saw a lot of people saying that the original Starfield, when it came, the original trailer they showed off, looked worse than Fallout 4. And it kind of was on that edge of like, this looks bad. It doesn't look great.
That was last year, the one they did?
The last year, yeah. This year looked a lot better than that. Like they really improved the overall like stuff. One thing that is very obvious though is like the limitations of the camera stuff that they use, and like the animations for the face.
Yeah,
really is that janky head weird.
It does not look cinematic.
Stuff. It doesn't look cinematic, and it's still there. And the reason why it looks even worse with helmets. So when you have the space helmets on, where like they can't really move their head much, otherwise it'll look weird. So it's just going to be, it's a lot of this robotic, and then like,
wait, like, where are you guys going?
Yeah, a lot of this, which just doesn't look natural at all. And that's really going to be, that's really where it fell down on. And even the better looking graphics for this one, when you had the screens with the people in the helmets talking, was like, oh, it still looks bad. Yeah. And I think that's just the limitation of the engine, and the limitation of the engine in the sense of like them trying to get things to look good and look their style while also cramming as much stuff as they are into the game. Because this is huge in comparison to any of their other games. This is a massive departure in terms of scale. Yeah. So,
and again, the scale is impressive because it gets down to that detail, to the little tubes on your spaceship, to the decorations on the little tubes on your spacesuit, decorations on your spaceship, even the food. They like pointed out that they're very concerned with how the food looks, which reminds me of somebody else we know. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a little bit too much CRG. But that's Bethesda. Like they love their foods and their food items. They love to do that. So
let's talk about from that. Let's talk about kind of the RPG elements that go into this. Food. Do you think that they're going to have hunger, that you're going to need to keep yourself fed for energy or for life or anything like that?
No, but I can almost guarantee you they'll have a survival mode. They had a survival mode for Skyrim. They had a survival mode for Fallout 4. I can imagine a realism mode that they'll use, or something like that, where you have to have water and food, and you have like every time you get shot, you can lose oxygen and stuff like that. They'll add some sort of level of survival realism to, because they always like to do that. So I don't think your average player will have to do that. I think you're going to have the typical Bethesda thing where you open up your inventory and you just nom down like a ton of food.
Click a button, quickly, makes a little sound effect.
Yeah, just you're in a helmet on, but who knows? Maybe they'll actually say you have a helmet on, you cannot eat. But
oh god, oh my gosh. I'm traumatized, dude. I take my helmet off to eat and I die every single day in Star Citizen. God, the helmet. It's so bad we have a command in my chat. It just spams a bunch of helmets to get me to put it back on. It still doesn't work.
Yeah.
But RPG elements, there are others. I did say that I like RPGs in the beginning of this podcast, and I have always felt like kind of a poser, because the RPGs I like are not the hardcore RPGs that a lot of RPG people would swear towards. So I look at this as a little bit deeper of an RPG than what I would normally get into. You said that it felt more complex than Mass Effect. Can you talk a little bit about the mechanics that make that so?
Well, Bethesda does this. It's a very traditional Bethesda. It's not too far off the path from what they do. Like Mass Effect, you can like upgrade your or was it Bionics? I can't remember what it was.
Biotics, yeah.
Your Biotics, yeah, your Biotics, and you could maybe increase your run speed or your reload speed. It was all focused on more like mechanics, like the mechanics of combat and mechanics of interacting with the world right directly in front of you during an event.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Bethesda has always been more about the universe. And so like the RPG stuff that they talked about here was, if I remember correctly, it's not do a thing and get XP for it. It's you get XP, but you also have to complete a task. So kill 50 bears with your bare hand, and then you get you can get your kill 50 enemies with your bare hands, and suddenly you can get that next perk, that next level up.
Yeah.
For the skill, you get skill for it. But you also need the XP to be able to get that in the first place.
And the nice bit is like it happens randomly. Like you're out there like maybe mining or lot picking or something, and you just happen to complete one, and suddenly you get a little level up. I love that. Feels good.
Yeah. I think it's going to be, from the way they described it's going to be kind of a twofold system. You need the XP, but you also need the like prerequisites to have done that thing before you can get there, which is nice. And where like Mass Effect I think had 3 backgrounds, where like those backgrounds sometimes played in. It was like Spacer, Soldier, or
Earthborn.
Earthborn. It was Colonist, Earthborn, or Spacer, right?
Yeah.
And this is like takes that and just goes like, here, have 100. Like it takes a TTRPG background system and applies it to the game. And so there'll be different perks that you get that will happen through social encounters or through random events where you'll have those because you have these specific perks or these specific background aspects to you.
You're telling me you don't think that they're just going to do a 10-minute intro that's different for each one? They're going to actually put in some other choices.
I think they'll actually put in some other choices. No, there was a little bit. Like you could meet your parents, and I think Mass Effect 2, right? Where you didn't meet them, you could call them.
Oh, I was alluding to another game with that statement. More recent.
Oh, you're talking about
game.
Oh. 10 minutes, and that's it. Yeah. But this is like incredibly in depth in terms of its use. I wouldn't say it's the most in depth I've ever seen. There are other RPGs out there that do this kind of system really well, and I doubt we're going to see but a handful of random encounters or specific events that will be affected by your background and your perks. But they've been it really leans into the thing that a lot of people like to do with Bethesda games well after they're released, which is roleplay. It really is emphasizes the roleplay in the roleplay game versus like the role in the. It emphasizes the role in the RPG rather than the play, which is what most like Mass Effect really more emphasizes the play. Bethesda is trying to with Starfield emphasize the role.
And that's like the crux of this game. It is a character-driven game. It seems like from the fact that you can like find NPCs out on Moon Stranded to join you, and they have conversations with you to like all of these different customizations. It feels very focused on you playing a space adventure in the way that you want, which is exactly what we want from Bethesda.
Yeah, especially with the scope that they're going with, the scale, the sheer volume of space that you have comparison. So,
speaking of which, let's go back to planets. The planets we don't really know what size they are, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that? Yeah. Do you think that that could end up being a problem if they end up being too big, or?
Yeah, I think the one problem it could end up being is while you have what they said, like 1,000 worlds or whatever, only 3 or 4 things are on every planet. So you end up having about the same amount of content you would have in a Fallout or Skyrim. It's
Right.
just spread out a lot more. And there's the problem that a lot of procedural games have a problem with, which is just a lot of empty space. Now, I think that will be a little bit better for kind of like leaning into the benefits of this idea, like they're really leaning into it with the exploration stuff, because you can build outposts almost everywhere. You can use those to gather resources. But I do think, for the most part, a lot of the planets will just be empty. They won't have a lot of gameplay features to them. You're not going to see well-crafted features. There might be some random encounters you can encounter out there, but I don't see a like a fully developed system the way that we a lot of people hope. They say 1,000 planets. That doesn't mean 1,000 handcrafted, fully populated worlds.
Sure.
You know.
People really liked the Radiant quest system from Skyrim. Do you think that's going to help them out with these planets? Do you think we'll see quests that require us to go to different planets? Do you think they'll be pretty self-contained?
I think they'll be fairly self-contained, but I think the Radiant system that they're developing, or I don't think they call it Radiant system anymore, but it's like the evolution of the Radiant system.
Whatever they want to call it.
Whatever it is, it's the same concept. They're going to have that, but it's going to be, I think, mostly on planets. They may expand out, but that's really most of the content is going to be the Radiant system for the non-story planets. And I think they said they had like 5 or 6 story planets, and the rest of them are all kind of randomly generated with Radiant quest stuff.
I didn't catch that. For those who don't know, it was an earlier kind of interview. They talked about how there's going to be a handful of handcrafted story worlds, but the rest of them are all just random encounters. Okay.
So
for those who don't know, what is the Radiant system?
So the Radiant system is kind of like a hopper system where it can generate a quest based off of an item or a person, like a bounty hunting like system, where you say, this outlaw is in this area, go kill them and come back and you will get, or kill them and you get this sort of thing. So that means that you don't necessarily draw the same event every single time. If you've done Fallout 4, the most famous example of the Radiant system is the settlement stuff, which is a big part of the Minuteman stuff, where like once you've built out the settlements, or once you start building settlements, you get a Radiant quest, which will it'll completely send you randomly to one of the settlement locations. Then you go talk to those locations, and you do the mission, you come back, and then randomly they'll be under attack, so you have to go help them out as well. And that's all based off the Radiant
quite
system.
a bit too. They just constantly get attacked.
Constantly. And they've said that they've evolved that a little bit so that it's no longer just that. It's not that simple. It's a little bit more. There are they'll like randomly generate NPCs and maybe even like camps or like towns in for some of them. My hope is that that's really what they do, is that like they have spots on every planet that they kind of designate as nodes where they can just randomly generate a town or an outpost or something like that so no player's experiences out there is the exact same, but it's hard to tell.
And with the big size that they have, 1,000 planets, it's an amazing number. It's very impressive. It's a good way to market the game. Do you feel like it's necessary?
No, but it gives them the overhead. It's a nice big number for marketing.
Yeah,
but if they can get 1,000 planets in, why not? Because that gives them overhead for DLC. Any of those planets can turn into its own hero planet if they.
That's really a good point. To. Yeah. As they add new stuff in, they can add them to those planets. And honestly, people are still walking around Skyrim exploring, so they're building that stuff for somebody, just not all the people who are playing the game.
I think they're building it for future proofing, because mods can take hold of it and change things up over there. There may be abilities for when they release their modding kit, because they always do. We may see a full-blown planet generator coming out of that, where people could like completely replace or generate their own systems or planets in the game too. We really don't know the capabilities, but this engine is very modifiable. It's very mod friendly, and Bethesda's always been very mod. So I think we'll see a significant improvement in this sort of this sort of direction, and that's really what this 1,000 planets is for. It's for the possibilities of players and devs to flesh out the game beyond its just initial story area. Then give you a little bit of more of a free roam situation, a sandbox to play in.
And it does look like from the videos that you can land anywhere, right? You just can't fly there.
Land.
Yeah, no. Looks a lot like Mass Effect, where they kind of zoom in on the planet and then you can kind of scroll around and pick a spot. But it does look like if you pick a spot, you can land there, which
I was worried about that. I was worried about it just being only places you could land are the important parts, and then they have to like just give you a walled garden of where you could go. But it seems like it's much more free from, which is nice.
Yeah. Okay. Talk about planets. Let's talk about spaceships. It's a space game. They've got spaceships, and surprisingly, as we talked about briefly before, they're modular. But like, what else goes into the spaceships that you can see from this game? We've got fighting, transportation. It's a little home. Did you see other features and functions that might make them useful, or does it really just kept to that, in your opinion?
Cargo for trading and stuff like that. It looks like they really built two games and kind of melded them together. The ground gameplay is traditional RPG that Bethesda likes to do, and the space game is their kind of first tentative step into a space game. So, because it's very simplistic. They talked about using the classic power triangle, and then they have 3 additional additions which is like laser, plasma, and ballistic or missiles or something like that. It's like ballistic, lasers.
Yeah, the missile, I think.
Yeah, so you have to have some power to those as well. They said like certain perks can let you target subsystems, but you can't EVA. You have to like walk up next. You can fly up next to a crate and click a button, and then you gather those resources for yourself. It's very elite, or other things.
It's kind of interesting. We saw 0G segments where the game, like something happens with the environment that makes it 0G, and we know that there's shipboarding through docking, but there's no EVA around your ship. Do you think that has something to do with like the movement system? Like they couldn't physicalize all that space around the spaceship, so they just kind of said you can't go out there?
Yeah, something like that. There's a major restriction to the engine. They'd have to hack it in somehow, and it wouldn't do well, sort of thing. I think that was the general feel.
Yeah.
But again, it may also be that there's a specific system set up for the FPS gameplay where they can select gravity on, gravity off. But then they'd have to build a brand new ground gameplay in space without any ground, with the gravity always off, which doesn't work well with that kind of concept.
And we know how physics transitions can be.
Can be absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
So.
What did you think of the shipboarding? I did not think that they were going to give us the ability to go inside other ships.
I hoped, but I'm glad we did. It's great. I love it. Fantastic. It adds so much more value. I know so many people who will just play as a space pirate. They'll be boarding everybody left, right, and center. And some people will be like the enforcers, will fly around and find people and board them exclusively, and so they can go do their space gameplay or their space marine gameplay sort of thing. So
yeah.
It's great. I love it. It's a great addition. I'm surprised. I'm surprised he was at it, but I think it's a good addition.
All right, let's talk about base building. That's another thing that was really being built out in the Fallout games. We kind of talked about how they were doing things that sort of prepared them for this. Do you think there's potential in the base building system? Do you think it could fall to just sort of a nuisance at some point? I really wish there was multiplayer, so I could show my base off.
Ask that question again. I'm trying to get it fall to a nuisance.
Yeah. Do you think that it's gonna last? Base building? Do you think it'll be something that sticks around? Yeah.
No.
Because in Fallout, I know some people did it a lot, but
yeah, there'll be a sub community that does it. But I mean, I don't think your typical person who's playing through the game is going to go out of their way to participate in that. I think the only advantage it'll give you is like resource. So you can like have a base that's set up to gather resources passively, so it won't be as a pain in the butt to go out and mine physically. but I don't see it really outside of a niche community. I don't see it as being one of those things that's really cool. I'd love to see it, like you said, co-op. I mean, if Bethesda could make a release after the case of having a co-op situation where you can play with friends, cool. That would be perfect for that, because you could, add a lot more value to it. But I don't. That's hopium at this point. We really don't know.
That's just going to be an entirely different change of. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Listen to Bethesda start talking about like server meshing or something, but honestly, I don't want another Fallout 76. So I'm cool with the single player game. It would be cool if it was multiplayer.
Yeah. Would you? I think they could do better. I think they could do a 76 with like a 4-player co-op with Starfield, but it's just co-op, not instead of this stupid like open world survival PvP thing that we're trying to do. So
right, yeah. Okay, let's talk about the biggest thing that sets this apart from the obvious comparison on this show, which would be Star Citizen. This is, while a character-driven game, there are quests. There is a main quest. There's a storyline. What have you gotten so far from how they've been explaining that?
In terms of comparing to Star Citizen?
And just in general, like the story, how does it sound to you?
It sounds what I've always wanted from Bethesda, which is Bethesda's strengths is in their world building, not in their storytelling. I would say it's very obvious. There are many videos out there that go in more depth than this. That'll just say that it's controversial. Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 were very controversial storytelling, and a lot of people didn't love Skyrim storytelling, but enjoyed it well enough that it was serviceable, and the characters inside of it were good. But there was a lot of concern that the storytelling would be as bad as Fallout 4, and I think what they've done with this is they still have a main story you can play, but it's really more generated around the idea of this is an open world that you can have interesting encounters in and explore. It's really, like I said, really leaning into that. This is an exploration game. This is not a game that you play for its story necessarily. You play it for playing in a universe, in a sandbox that you are part of. So
it feels a little Mass Effect, doesn't it? Like you find an artifact, and then it looks like you get some kind of like powers and visions. And
if we're talking about that, it's very Mass Effect 1. Like if we're talking about that story, like the main quest story, it is the Chosen One narrative, like amped up to 11. Part of a secret mythical organization, and you suddenly get special powers to turn off gravity.
And they're like, please join us. We need you.
Yeah.
Just grab the controller.
You are the Chosen One, which is very different from, say, Squadron 42, which like everyone will make the comparison. Because I know people in our communities will make the comparison. It's not Star Citizen. This is compared to Squadron 42. The answer to that is it's not, because Squad 42 is you're just a dude in a fighter pilot. You're a fighter pilot in extraordinary circumstances.
You're kind of the chosen one. I mean, you get to fly next to Old Man. You're in Squadron 42. You're probably at the tip of the spear.
But I mean, that's like you work your way up to that. The story doesn't start with you being super epic elite hero. You don't get some major event where you're chosen to be for greatness. You're just a guy in the ship. And there's other ship games like that with kind of more that narrative, but this is very much more hero's journey sort of tale.
Squadron 42 feels more story based, whereas this feels more character based.
Oh yeah, and character and environment based almost. It's the environment is part of is a character in the whole thing. So
it is. I mean, I'm not going to make the comparison to Cyberpunk. We were talking about that earlier today, how Cyberpunk kind of got this whole, like, how at least I personally would have loved to see more of like a living in the Cyberpunk world story as opposed to being a hero of the Cyberpunk world like they did in that game. This kind of gets that vibe to me, but at the same time, with a space game, I understand it is a little bit harder to just have a game where you're just existing without being special, right? And I'm not sure I can think of any space games where you're just kind of like some random person in space and not getting to become some hero. Maybe Hard
Yeah,
Space
I think
Shipbreaker.
Most games focus on most space games focus on you becoming the hero in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, the story I don't think is going to be the selling point here. I really feel like it's those mechanics, those RPG elements, the characters. Let's finish this up by kind of doing a direct comparison to a couple other choices. I guess let's start with the most obvious. Our neck of the woods, Star Citizen, Squadron 42. How do you think those kinds of players might be interested in a game like this?
If you liked aspects of Star Citizen that are not out yet, trading, like settlement building, farming, you love it. If you're a space dad, and I don't mean this in the derogatory way, the kind of people I've heard talk about, I don't want to have to deal with PvPers. I just want to I don't have a lot of time. Me and my 17 kids, I
don't have that many turrets on my ship.
Yeah, they're all take up my time, and I got to go do all these other things with my life, and I only got 20 minutes a day, 22.5 minutes a day to play the game. If you're that folk, this is perfect. This is your game. Like, this is the kind of game you'll enjoy.
Yeah.
If you're somebody who's like, I really liked Freelancer. I liked I'll say, is it Rebel Outlaw? No. It's something Outlaw Rebel. Can't remember the name of it.
I thought Rebel Outlaw was the game.
No. It was Outlaw, yeah, but it was like Rebel Space or Space Rebel. I can't remember. Outlaw. Okay. The Outlaw was the secondary game. Someone's going to correct me in the comments and stuff like that. But as that game, for instance, the Freelancers, Starlancer, the sorts of more like Privateer, the open world where you go around and you do missions and there is a story and there are factions, that kind of game, you'll love this thing. If you played the original Elite games, this is the kind of evolution of that. I think there'll be some people who are there's going to be people who are like, this is not like the game I really want. And I already seen them. There's a lot of people who are like, I can't fly in atmosphere. No, I don't care. I want to play my game. Mm-hmm. I can't play it with friends. No, there are those people for sure. But.
Yeah. This game, like I've been saying this whole time, is exactly what I looked for as a gamer. I was RPG. I wasn't into space sims. If this had come up before Star Citizen did, I might have never put a decent amount of time into Star Citizen. But Star Citizen has taught me to be interested in other things. A flowing economy, connectivity with other people, like the difference it can make between running into another player versus running into an NPC, the way that things are meant to impact other things. We don't know how expansive Starfield is in terms of like, if you do something on this planet and it like ruins an outpost or it causes an emergency or something, is that going to affect the rest of the game? That's like the kind of stuff that you would see from a game like Fable. And I don't think we've really heard about that sort of thing in something like this. So I do feel like this game, like you said, it's perfect if you enjoy a single player game. Like definitely this is going to be a great game to play in the meantime, in the not so meantime, all the time. But I do think you're still going to be missing out on things that you would be looking for in a game like Star Citizen. Not to say that game is anywhere near close as finished as this one is. You could play this game for 3 years and you will still have time to come back to Star Citizen and get in. So I see a lot of people being able to jump into this and try it, not for those same experiences, but because as a derivative, it looks amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the cries to that this game is going to destroy any other game is preposterous. It's not going to like this game isn't competing with anything else. The closest we even talked about was Mass Effect, and the next Mass Effect, we don't even know when that game is coming out.
Yeah.
It could be years away still. So, Squadron 42 is nowhere near. There's no real single player science fiction game. The expansion for Cyberpunk is coming out like the same week as Starfield, or like the week after Starfield, which might be the only real thing I can think of.
Yeah.
So,
Outer Wilds too, but it looks like that's still a couple years off. So
yeah,
it doesn't really seem like as much.
So.
Do you think Mass Effect fans are going to be able to just translate over to this 1-to-1?
I think people will find a hole in their heart from Mass Effect for this, for sure. Almost certainly. It's very like, what was the Normandy? It was very, you had a group of people together and you could meet with them and you could talk with them and rely on them. The same sort of system here. It's light explorations, social encounters, trying to negotiate your way through things or shoot your way through things, different approaches. There's a lot of DNA that they share between each other, but that's just because, it's the kind of classic Western RPG DNA system that's been around for a long time.
Right. Yeah.
But if you've been scratching that itch, you've been like, man, Andromeda sucked, or I enjoyed Andromeda, or whatever. If it's been years, it has been literal years since the last Mass Effect game, and you're looking for a Mass Effect sort of experience, this is probably going to be one of those. So.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing about this game. Above all else, it's not just another game. I don't know if we talked about it during the podcast or if this was during our live stream, but this is coming at like the perfect time for a sci-fi space game. The excitement around all the space exploration going on and the telescope being up there, and like multiple countries are getting up into space now.
Artemis program is coming up to is going to be happening here shortly. Like Artemis, the next Artemis mission is happening soon-ish. So
and then on top of that, like the technology that's come out that's allowed this to happen, and the fact that there's kind of a space research. I don't want to call it a resurgence, but like there are pretty good space games, in all the genres, from like the puzzle games to the freaking 4X Stellaris games. Like this is the mainstream game this genre needs to maybe get some new legs going into the next decade, and especially with like the impressive progress that in-game engines like Unreal Engine are making. This stuff could get really, really good in the next few years. So I hope that this game, above all else, even if it's not the game that I love, I just hope that it does a good job of propping up the sci-fi industry, because this could be really good. It could be great for all of these games.
I think, and I think that's the big thing, this point. Like, this is going to do great for every other science fiction game out there. This will do well for Elite, for the X series, for Star Citizen, for all of the games that are out there, because while I'm sure it will be a fantastic game, and even if it's the best game that Bethesda has ever made, very little bugs, there are still restrictions. There's still things that they chose not to do, which other games do, and possibly even do better than Starfield will. And so people will have those inklings, those things. Like, I'm looking for another thing. Oh, here's this great game that's coming out. It's got all these big name actors, and it's like Starfield, and you're in space, flying spaceships, and it's, Squad 42. Here it is. The next Elite game comes out, and it's same thing. A rising tide floats all ships. So like, the more people are aware of the sci-fi genre and how fun it can be, the more it's going to benefit all the games in the genre.
So. You could tell someone, and this is a reference to the game show we just watched, you could tell somebody that this is the Star Citizen is the Microsoft Flight Simulator 24 to the Microsoft Flight Simulator, what was that, 2019 or whatever. Like, that game can take the mining that you did in Starfield, where you just kind of lasered a rock off the ground and got a couple resources, maybe where you flew your ship over but didn't get to actually fly down to the planet. Maybe you wanted to go into an outpost and do more than just shoot the people, kind of like that. Like, you want to get deeper into mining, try out this game. And it might not be Star Citizen, it could be Hard Space Shipwreck, it could be No Man's Sky, but it opens the door.
Love that for it's definitely so I was looking through the apparently you can buy the Constellation edition PC for
PC.
On PC, Constellation Edition for PC for $300. Sorry, I was just looking up that.
It's
This is
hefty.
that's the special edition.
That's the one with the watch and everything.
The watch and everything, yeah.
Wait,
So.
does it also come with the controller and the headphones? Because if you get the game, the watch, the controller, and the headphones, that's okay. I was gonna say that's a $300 value, I'd say.
Yeah, it's pretty up there. Like the watch, it comes with the case, it comes with the patch, it comes with the game, it comes with the display case, it comes with the downloads and a bunch of extras and stuff like that. And that's it's close to $300 because it's a smartwatch, so it's probably close to that anyways. So,
but what does it run on? Oof. Like, is it gonna get updates?
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Those are just extras. Overall, I'm excited about this game. I think, as with any game these days, really it comes down to cautious optimism. What are your final thoughts though before we close out? What are you thinking about Starfield? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like you said, cautiously optimistic. I feel like we are going to get a game that, like many other Bethesda games, will likely see much longer lifespan than it's supposed to have, and we'll probably do a lot more things that are it'll do well. I think we'll be doing well. So.
Yeah. Do you think that Microsoft's going to allow modding to the same extent that Bethesda normally does? Yeah.
100%. I think they're going to hands off it for most of this and just let them go with it, because they'll probably add mods to the Xbox store just like they did with everything else. So
look forward to that. I'm excited for this. I'm going to keep covering this from here until launch. I'll be putting out videos about this on both my channels. I'll probably do some podcast episodes, and I'm sure you will.
Here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Like I said on your the live stream, I also did an entire video on the lore of the backstory and the history of Starfield, and I'll be doing that myself going forward. So
cool. Can you tell everybody where they can find that content when you put it out?
YouTube.com/TheAstroHistorian or YouTube.com/TheAstropub Live.
The Astropub Live. Why'd you change that?
Because I changed the Astropub to the Astro Historian, and you couldn't change the Astropub. I couldn't get back the Astropub, even though it didn't exist anymore, because it was now the Astro Historian.
Oh, that's a bummer.
So,
that's a bummer.
Yeah, it's still the Astropub on YouTube. So if you just searched the Astropub on YouTube or the Astro Historian, they'll pop them up. So
cool. And you can find this shiny boy's content on Space Tomato or Space Tomato 2 on YouTube. Also, obviously, this podcast is available on all audio platforms. I'm doing streams on Twitch. We've got a community on Discord if you'd like to join us. We're also got a website with some blogs and giveaways going on. So check that out. Link down below. But ultimately, I'd like to thank everybody for coming and watching or listening to this podcast episode. It is different from our normal stuff. And Launch Sequence has always been a sci-fi game-focused podcast. So while I do cover Star Citizen a lot, Citizen Central is the Star Citizen podcast. This one is always going to delve out a little bit more. So thank you, Astropub, for joining me today to talk about this new upcoming RPG. Man,
Thanks for having me,
pumped.
as always.
Yeah, of course. All right, man. Well, until next time, and until next time, all of you, I'll catch you all next week.